This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Episode 169 is now available for download on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, I'm kind of surprised, not dressed in any kind of costume, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Speaking of surprised, I was expecting some hail to the victors, something related to Michigan and their big win over Michigan State. And you know what I get? I get our basic intro, our basic opening. This show is so basic right now.
My goodness, what do you think I was going to do after that performance, man? I was angry. I might have some hot takes on this episode regarding that performance.
Ooh, hot takes.
I might sit here
takes.
and be willing to say that Michigan State could have defeated the number 2 or 3 ranked team in the country had the coaches gotten their heads out of their asses and done a much better job of preparation and in-game coaching. How am I, as a fan, supposed to sit here last weekend as a football fan, a guy that loves to sit and watch two teams compete, watching Mark Dantonio and Jim Caldwell botch the in-game performances? It was totally unacceptable. And we'll start off with, obviously, the news of the week. Michigan came to East Lansing, and for the first time in the history of this podcast, you could sit here post-game and say that Michigan walked away with the victory and the Paul Bunyan Trophy. Good job. 7, twice in the last 9 years, you got a chance to defeat Michigan. Good job. We got 7-2 in the last 9 years.
When you minimize it like that, it doesn't make me feel real good. However, that victory made me feel good. What didn't make me feel good was watching that final 30 seconds play out. And I'm going to kind of do some clerical work here. Oh my God, I got to address what happened on Twitter with me and why I didn't necessarily refer to you as a clown, and I didn't necessarily refer to Michigan State as clowns. I was more upset with what Mark Dantonio did. With 30 seconds left in the game, he's basically trying to run up the score so it doesn't look so bad the way Michigan was defeated. And that really irked me. It bothered me so much because you're going to go for a 2-point conversion when it doesn't help you in any way. Just kick the extra point, take the point, come back and do the onside kick, and let's just go from there. Instead, Marky D wants to sit there and trick around, try to reinvent the wheel after Michigan State goes down and scores a touchdown, cutting the score to within 7. You kick the extra point, or actually at this point, cutting the score to, within 7. You kick the extra point, score is now within 6. All you've got to do then is kick the onside kick, get the ball back, and then go ahead and score a touchdown. You win the game with the extra point because it's an untimed down. So what he ended up doing was just shot himself in the foot, made himself look like a petulant child. It almost appears as if Jim Harbaugh is in Mark Dantonio's head. I don't know if you have a hot take on that or not, but seriously, I have no idea what Mark Dantonio was doing in those final 30 seconds. His answer left me scratching my head and with my tongue in my cheek more than it did sitting there satisfying any of my curiosity. So upset with what happened. And when Jabril Peppers sits there and scores on that botched 2-point conversion, all I did was stand up on my bar stool. Mind you, I was quite a few deep. And I just let out the biggest F yeah. And I sat there and I pumped my chest and I high-fived everybody that was around me. And I sat there and picked my wife up and gave her a big old hug and kiss. And I was like, you know what? You guys deserve that. You deserve that.
That was basically what Michigan State fans have seen this whole year. An attempt to, obviously, the game was over, bro. I mean, I think you're overvaluing what happened at the end. The game was over. They were just trying to score as many points.
Man.
It was tacky.
I thought it was childish. I expect more out of that caliber of coach. I've told you time and time again, I think Mark Dantonio is a great coach. I really respect him. I respect the job that he's done at Michigan State. I think he's outstanding. I think you, as a former Michigan State alum, should be proud of your football coach. What he did right there, he looks like a child. He looks stupid. He looks small. He looks like, I don't want to use the term little brother because I don't like that term, but it really harkens back to the days when Michigan State couldn't beat Michigan, or the shoe was on the other foot where you would beat Michigan 2 times out of 9. Do you know what I'm saying? It just harkened back to all of that, and there's no need for it. You're a much better program now than you ever were.
Listen, I just think that they were trying to run a play. I don't think there was too many more hidden meanings that everyone's trying to give to it. They botched it. They were just trying to score another point, and Mark Dantonio came out and said, listen, at any point in time, we're just trying to run plays and score as many points as possible. And I really believe him. I don't think that Jim Harbaugh's in his head. I don't think that he was trying to be petulant or trying to do anything that was disrespectful. Listen, the game was over. He knew it. The players knew it. The game was over, and he just ran a play. And like the majority of plays that have been key this year, they botched it. But more importantly, I would say, my hot take would be that Michigan State could have won that game. It was supposed to be a 50-point blowout. It was supposed to be this DX-style coronation where they just come out and, DX
told you it was
chop.
going to be close.
Everyone knew that if you were going to bet money, that you probably would take Michigan State and the points, especially at home. But I would argue that had Michigan State come out with a better game plan, had they been able to basically, when you had the opportunity, when the momentum was given to you, Spate turned the ball over to us. Spate threw an interception, and I knew you guys were a little bit nervous when Michigan State was driving and they had the ball in the red zone and they're going for that touchdown. And what does Michigan State decide to do? That was the key play of the game. You got the ball. You got a myriad of talent. You got Josiah Price. You got Donnie Corley Jr. What did, when Michigan was down 7, what did they do? They gave the ball to their playmaker, Jabril Peppers. Boom, speeds into the end zone. Touchdown. What did Michigan State try and do when they get into the red zone? 4 straight runs. I was here watching that, in the office. I almost damn near kicked the TV down. 4 straight runs. All the time, Michigan fans, people associated with Michigan have tried to use Michigan State's words against them. I have never subscribed to that, but this time it happened. Pride came before the fall. Michigan State and Mark Dantonio tried to answer for that, and he said that, hey, we need to win those battles. You needed to win those battles. The entire Spartan Nation, the entire nation knew that Michigan had a solid run defense. You thought you were going to run. Okay, first down didn't work. Second down didn't work. Third down didn't work. You're going to try it again on fourth down. Pride came before the fall, and right then and there, Michigan gathered all the momentum, and that was a wrap. And at that point in time, I knew the game was over. And the rest was just semantics in that I believe that if Michigan really wanted to, they could have rolled 60 points on Michigan State in that putrid defense. But that was the key moment of the game. You would have had a chance to really, put a little bit more pressure on Michigan to perform. You might have had more doubt creep into their spirit. And then we would have seen what would have happened. But in the end, pride came before the fall. And Michigan State tried to do what they always do, which was, smash mouth football. But when it wasn't, successful, you've seen what happened. They tried and tried again to do it unsuccessfully, and it resulted in a momentum. The defense for Michigan gained so much momentum and pride from that series right there. The game was over. And Michigan deserved to win. They were the better team. They showed up to East Lansing and performed. They didn't, basically, it wasn't a coronation. They didn't destroy Michigan State. But all in all, you had to do what you had to do. You walk away still undefeated and garnering more national respect. And in essence, for Jim Harbaugh, it's a weight lifted off his shoulders. I mean, everyone's going to judge Jim Harbaugh on a couple things. Wins versus Michigan State, wins versus Ohio State, and getting trophies. Big Ten title trophies, national title trophies, getting into the college football playoff. That's what he's going to be judged upon, and you can see that it looked like it was a huge weight lifted off of his shoulders. Good job to Michigan. All applause. They have a solid team.
Talking about the play call the sequence of play calls that you just discussed. At the time, you do have to realize LJ Scott put up almost 140 yards on that Michigan defense, which was supposed to be a vaulted run defense. So I don't think running the ball 3 straight times was necessarily an issue. I think the play call, trying to run it up the gut 3 straight times, was a little bit more of an issue. So I think you're right. But that moment right there was the tipping point. At that time, momentum totally swang around, and Michigan basically took the ball and ran with it from there. Michigan State puts a light touchdown on the board, then goes for 2. Momentum swings again when Jabril Peppers picks up that ball and runs it back and scores an additional 2 points for Michigan. Michigan gets out of there with a monster victory. Perfect question that you posed after everything was said and done. After the dust settled, the stadium cleared out, Michigan was in their locker room, Michigan State was in their locker room, and Paul Bunyan was where he rightfully belonged on his way back to Ann Arbor. You posed a great question. What did you see from this game that makes you think Michigan can go on and beat Ohio State? Do you have any fear with the Ohio State matchup? And I'm going to say absolutely. absolutely. This going into this matchup, we thought that Michigan had a great run defense. Michigan had an overall great defense. That defense was gashed from the moment that game opened up. LJ Scott just ran roughshod all over him and scored an opening drive touchdown. After that, it was kind of, trading blows back and forth. Michigan ends up getting out to a big lead at halftime, and then after that, it was probably one of the worst second halves of football that I've seen in a long time. Since, well, I don't know, later on in the weekend, I watched the Lions game, and that was pretty atrocious as well, so whatever. LJ Scott puts up almost 140 yards. Michigan State as a team puts up almost 218 yards of run offense. There's an issue there. You're going to go face an Ohio State team that can run the ball. They've got a quarterback that loves to tuck the ball and loves to run. And what's given Michigan problems over the myriad of history at U of M? A running quarterback. So yes, I have some concerns headed into that matchup. Do I think they're going to get it fixed? I absolutely do. Absolutely, I think they're going to get fixed. And I think that they were better. They were able to go on the road, face a rival opponent, a tough opponent. I know that Michigan State's now lost 6 in a row, and their record doesn't say that they're a tough opponent. But that's a tough game. When it's Michigan State, it's a tough game. Michigan was able to go on the road, come away with a victory, and you know what? They kind of got their pants pulled down a little bit, and they kind of got spanked on the bottom. So I expect them going forward, leading up to the Ohio State game, to sit there and get these things corrected, squared away, and I expect this Ohio State game to be a little bit different than what we've seen against Michigan State.
Don Brown, give him credit. When he was brought on to the staff to coach that defense, oh my goodness, look what he's done. Do you see a difference in the Michigan's defense? Blitzing all the time, they're putting pressure, and it's going to be one of those things where in the game versus Ohio State, it's just going to be one of those things where you can throw all those things out the window. It's going to be mano. It's going to be Ohio State's offense versus Michigan's defense, and who's going to come away the victor. It's going to be predicated on who has the advantage in that matchup. Does Michigan get home on a myriad of blitzes? Is Peppers and Lewis and Stribling, are they able to kind of contain JT Barrett and that offense? And it's going to come down to a couple key plays late. I believe that Ohio State game can go a couple of ways. Either Michigan can get out to a huge lead with that offense, because that offense, if it's purring, it's going to be hard to stop. Or it's going to be a super tight game going back and forth, and it's going to come down to who has the ball late and who makes the key plays on either does Ohio State make the key plays late, or if Michigan has a 3-point lead and Ohio State has the ball late, does that defense sustain them and give Michigan the victory that they need? It's going to be a close matchup. I really believe probably that could be one of the games of the year, and Michigan's going to be up for it, but I do believe Ohio State's going to bring their A++ game, and if you're a Michigan fan, all you can hope for is that maybe Michigan State can play spoiler and do some things and maybe perform versus Ohio State, or that in that matchup, when the Buckeyes show up, that the Big Ten's already in hand if Ohio State loses another ball game. You could hope for that, but in the end, you want to go to Columbus and you want to, wear the crown. Go to Ohio State like Michigan State did and beat the man. That's all you got to do. Go out there, perform, beat the man, and let's see what happens, where it shakes out, because it's looking like, and it's shaping up to be a special season, number 2 for Jim Harbaugh, because if Michigan goes undefeated this year, wins the Big Ten, goes on, wins the Big Ten title, they go on to the college football playoff, maybe defeat an Alabama, defeat a top 4 team in his second year. If Jim Harbaugh does these kind of things, then look out, because the tide is turning. Michigan's done a lot of great things in recruiting. They're playing well. Spade doesn't look like a first-year starter. He looks solid, obviously when you have great wide receivers, you have a solid defense, it makes you look better, but he is obviously getting better game by game, limiting his mistakes as much as possible. But you ask me right now, do I think Michigan has the best chance of any to go to Columbus and win? I say yeah, but you definitely got to correct some of those mistakes. I think they can do it. I think that now you're starting to look at some much bigger goals, maybe getting to that college football playoff.
Speaking of Don Brown and his defense, over 28% of the plays that were ran on Saturday against Michigan State happened behind the line of scrimmage, either forcing the quarterback to hurry, sacking the quarterback, or tackling somebody for a loss. That just goes to show you what that defense can do. It is built to provide pressure on the quarterback, put pressure on the running backs, whether they have to be in a blocking scheme or they're trying to run the ball. It is built to sit there and force turnovers, whether they be fumbles or interceptions. Don Brown will get this corrected, and I believe that they will go into Ohio and will go to Ohio State. And at this point, I'm expecting Michigan to come away with a win. It's going to be close. It's going to be tightly tested. But year two, this is something that I did not expect from a Jim Harbaugh coach team, especially with where Michigan was. We talked about it before the season started, and you were like, are you expecting national championship? And I said, no, not right now. I'm expecting them to sit there and challenge Michigan State, because we both expected Michigan State to be much better than what they are. We both expected them to go in and challenge Ohio State. And at this point, I'm expecting them to get a win against both their main rivals this season. And I'm expecting them to go on and play in the granddaddy of them all here. Play for a national championship. The way it is setting up right now, besides Ohio State, doesn't have anything left really on their schedule. Look, they're going to go, they're going to play Maryland. I don't believe in Iowa. I told you that from the beginning of the year. Kinnick's a hard place to go and play because the crowd's right up on you. It's loud. It's a little bit raucous. I think they're going to handle Iowa. Then you've got Indiana coming to Ann Arbor. And look, Indiana's got a great offense. They have a really good offense. Their defense is questionable at best, though, and I think Michigan will be able to handle them. So basically, they've got 3 weeks now to sit there and prepare, game plan, get things ready for that huge showdown against Ohio State on November 26th.
And look at some other things that happen when you have a situation like this. Michigan is getting all the pub nationally. They're bringing in hot recruits. It's going to be tough, though, next year because Michigan is losing a lot of talent off of this roster. And so you better try and achieve as many goals as you can this year because you might have a similar. I don't think you're going to lose 6 straight and go well under 500 next year, but some of the losses may pile up next year if you're looking at trying to, really keep this going when you lose a lot. They're losing, I think, over 18 to 20 players next year.
Yeah, this year.
Go for it.
If it's going to be special, this is going to be the year that it's special. Because like you said, next year there's going to be a high rate of turnover. How do you get all these guys in? How do you get them kind of caught up to game speed? I think that's why you like to see why you see Jim Harbaugh like to run it up a little bit. Sit there and put 78 on a Rutgers. And that way you can sit there in the whole fourth quarter. You can basically play guys for next year. Get them some game action. Get them some reps in there. So next year, not a huge fall off. And I don't think that it'll be as dramatic of a fall off as Michigan State's this year, but I'm expecting it to be a step back next year.
Talking about a step back, I'm very curious as to kind of my own reaction to the Lions' loss to the Houston Texans, in that I kind of didn't feel like that I was that upset.
Yeah.
Knowing that, when you watch the Lions and you see that, how they play on the road, how do they perform when they have a level of success? And when you have a coach like Jim Caldwell, who's just known as a guy that struggles mightily in game in terms of management, and when it was brought about, I believe in the first quarter, when they said that, hey, this officiating crew was the same one back earlier in the season that threw 29 flags. I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now. Is this really what's going to happen right now? That was a typical Lions game. And now, as I was watching it, I just started to have fun with it, drinking game alert. Whenever there was a flag thrown, boom, have a shot. And people were dying laughing on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, following along, because that was a game that we typically see when the Lions don't perform. Lots of penalties, Jim Caldwell acting like a boob, not making the right choices. And then the best part is the storyline of the game happens when I'm in the shower. We were going to go out for the kids. I'm like, this game's over. This is nothing. There's nothing going on here. It's a nothing matchup. Hop in the shower, about to go to a Halloween shindig for the kids, about to lay out my costume, looking all Arabic chic-ish and all that good stuff. I'm trying to, have a good time on a Sunday, and all of a sudden I come out and our Twitter page is blown up. What's going on with Jim Caldwell? I can't believe he did this, can't believe he did that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I sit through 2.5 hours, and the storyline moment, I missed it. But I would argue that the storyline moment is not him going for, the onside kick and ordering that up. The storyline is when you have a chance to potentially get a momentum-changing play, when I believe it was DeAndre Hopkins has the ball, takes a couple steps, and fumbles the football. He's right there. He's got the flag in his hand. And I know a lot of people are blaming him, but organizationally, somebody in his ear said, don't throw it. which is absolutely ridiculous that was the notion. And they tried to cover their ass beautifully. I give him absolute credit for how he handled after the game when he's asked. He's like, we were told that, and we were given a notion that wasn't going to be overturned. I don't care. You still got to look at it. You got to give the impression that you know what's going on. Then the onus is not on you. The onus is on the stupid referees and the replay system and the debate regarding, whether we know what a catch is, what, a receiver does after the ball. Put the onus on them. Instead, again, what Jim Caldwell does is he makes decisions that put his ass right in the line of fire. I'm going to argue that the worst call of the weekend of anybody, whether it be Dantonio, whether it be Jim Caldwell, the staff, the worst call of the weekend was him not throwing that challenge flag. That cost you a chance to get some momentum, and that really cost you the football game. The onside kick, whatever, it's debatable. The defense, I give him credit in that he's trying to protect that defense. He knows that defense is shitty. He knows.
Is that what he's doing?
He's protecting that defense.
I feel like he threw them all underneath the bus by kicking that onside kick with just a little bit less than 3 minutes to go.
Listen, he's not trying to publicly. He is lying to everybody. He knows that defense is weak. He's just not going to come out and state it publicly. You can tell by his actions. He went for the onside kick. A little bit aggressive, overly aggressive, statistically not the right move, but when you see what that defense is doing, look, okay, you had a chance to, even after you botched the onside kick, stop them. They couldn't do it. They could not stop the running game. They could not stop Houston at the key times, and that's a difficult thing to sit here and take on this, on this week where they're 4-4. It's difficult to take that they lost, but I'm not as upset because we've seen that game a myriad of ways. Another loss.
Things that are guaranteed. Jim Caldwell will somehow screw everything up for your Detroit Lions. You had a well-oiled machine, just rocking and rolling, 3 straight wins, looked like a good team. Everybody's talking about Matt Stafford for MVP. The fire has been turned down on Jim Caldwell, and then they go into Houston, and he doesn't just botch one play. He botches 2 plays. Like you said, doesn't challenge the Hopkins fumble, which was a fumble. They ruled it an incomplete pass. He should have threw the flag. What are you going to do? You're going to lose a timeout? You don't use those things correctly anyways. You're an absolute idiot. So what's it matter if you blow a timeout here and you don't win it? At least give your team the chance to sit there and get the ball back, prevent a score, go down the field and put some points on the board. No, instead you keep that in your back pocket where your hand was, just sitting there feeling on your own booty. Then, 3 minutes left, after you score, you decide to go for an onside kick, basically chucking your entire defense underneath the bus. And this was the bigger issue for me. You chuck your entire defense underneath the bus. You show that you have no confidence in their ability to stop the run. That's all Houston was doing. They weren't putting the ball in Brock Osweiler's hands. You don't want it there anyways if you're a Houston fan. You want to give the ball to your running backs, let them run, and sit there and keep the clock moving. So you knew they were going to run. Your job was to stop them from running. Instead, you kick the onside kick. It's a horrible onside kick. Doesn't work out at all. Now, Houston's got the ball basically right around midfield, and then they just sit there, they run the ball up your gut the entire time. Load up the box. You know they're not going to pass. You got to get a stop. You've already sat there, and basically before the 2-minute warning, you blew every timeout you had because you were an idiot. Kick the ball deep like a normal good coach would do. Put your defense out there and stop them. Force them to sit there and give you the ball back. Coach your guys up. Put your team in a spot to win a game, and don't sit there and blow it for them. This is a game that we can honestly say Jim Caldwell cost this team this game. It wasn't Matt Stafford throwing a late interception. It wasn't a fumble by a running back. It wasn't the offensive line opening up like a sieve and just letting guys run in and sit there and destroy Matthew Stafford. It wasn't the defense not being able to sit there and contain guys. It was your head coach. Your head coach who has a staff. He sat there and went out and invested money in another set of guys to sit there and help him make these calls during games because he wears 2 wristwatches and he can't sit there and seem to tell time or know what the hell's going on at any point during the game.
Now I want to challenge you on this notion. Jim Caldwell did not help his team win, but there was probably an even larger factor that has cost this team in their 4 losses. Okay, what have we raved about in the previous podcast editions about the Lions team? That offense. But look at what they've scored when they've lost. Anywhere from 10 to 20 points when they've lost games. I'm going to argue that this offense and at times when Jim Bob Cooter's scheme and that offensive scheme isn't right, and they don't do a lot of things offensively, this team also is going to struggle mightily. And anybody, an average guy like me, sitting on my couch, drinking beer, getting fat, watching the football game is going, dude, this offense is, not doing much. It's a dink and dunk offense. And they're not throwing the ball deep. They're not taking chances. I understand completely why they're doing that. They are trying to obviously see what the defense gives them, try to be super safe, ultra conservative, take certain chances at scheduled times. You know what I love about, covering football and watching it? At certain points in time, certain players have to come and talk to the media. And on Wednesday, Matthew Stafford was right up front talking to the media. And somebody finally asked, and it was a great question. They came up and they asked Matthew Stafford, hey, in the second half of the season, do you think you want to throw the ball more deep, more often? And he came out with the PC answer that really shed light on what's going on and what the problem is. He came out with the standard Caldwell line that we're just going to take what the defense gives us. Hell no, that philosophy right there, taking what the defense gives you, is saying, okay, we're just going to see what this defense does, and we're going to predicate what we're doing based upon them. I'm going to argue that Jim Bob Cooter and his scheme versus Houston was not correct. I believe that they tried to run the ball way too much, even knowing, and Jason corrected me in that I thought that they had a really strong pass defense. They got a really strong rush defense, and they tried, or they got a really weak rush defense, and they tried to run the ball. But at home, you start to notice in game that, okay, your goal was to run the ball because they were weak, supposedly. But it doesn't work. It's not working. They're stopping you. So what do? Air out the football. Stop throwing it 4 yards at a time. Do something different. Maybe take a chance more often. They take chances, but it's scheduled. They look at certain schemes and they put it in. And I'm saying, listen, take the reins off. Even if he throws a pick, what's expected, really, in the end? This team is an 8-8 team. Everybody knows it. Take the reins off a little bit. Stop neutering your multi-million-dollar quarterback. Let the dude throw the damn football. If you're going to just try and neuter him and then, really come out and say, oh, Stafford's improved. No, he's not. You've neutered him. All you've done is say, okay, we're going to throw the ball 4 yards, super safe, 3-step drop, boom, it's done. That's not what we're looking for from Matthew Stafford. Now, that leads to a whole other topic, is that does this team not believe that he can effectively do it? Or the other question is, are they so regimented that they say, this is our game plan, and we're just going to stick to it, no matter what we see invariably in the game? Hey, you go out there, and I agree. Hey, if Houston has a shitty rush defense, you go out there, you try to run the ball. But you have to, in game, see, hey, we're not doing it. It's not working. We're not scoring. What was it, 0-0 at some point in the first quarter? It was dull, horrible, penalty-ridden. You have to look at what's going on in the game. You have to say, okay, we're obviously not running the ball effectively. We're not doing things. Make adjustments. They can't do it. They refuse to do it. It's an organizational, philosophical issue, and it's pure nonsense. That's why this football team with a real coach is a 6-2 team. This is what this team is. It's a 6-2 team. No loss to Tennessee, no loss to Chicago. That's a 6-2 football team.
Shouldn't have lost to Houston either.
But, okay, you would take it on the road. It's tough. But it's a 6-2 football team with a 4-4 record, squarely because organizationally they're not doing the right things. It's bullshit.
You know who's been involved in the offense the most in all the losses? It's your boy Eric Ebron.
Came back and a loss,
it's
right?
Eric Ebron.
Of course.
And look, I'm not trying to harp on the guy. What I want you to do is I want you to sit there and I want you to realize what's going on. Eric Ebron has been integral in the 4 losses. He was helpful in one win, and that was the win against Indiana where he scored a touchdown. Otherwise, he has been in every game that they have lost. But the games that he wasn't in, they sat there and they won. And I want to tell you why. I'm going to explain it to you. He's not a jinx. The thing is, he's their big wide receiver, right? He's their big pass catcher. He's supposed to help open things up underneath the middle, supposed to be able to open things up along the sidelines there. What happens is this is kind of what you've seen with Calvin Johnson when Calvin Johnson was part of this offense. This is a little bit of what we discussed last week on the podcast and why we wouldn't want Calvin Johnson back. What happens is they sit there and they try to force feed Eric Ebron the ball. They're not as creative. Jim Bob Cooter's game plan and Matt Stafford's game plan is not as creative when a guy like Eric Ebron's in there. He basically stalls it out. A guy like Anquan Bolden, who had a huge play the week before, isn't involved in the game because you got to get Eric Ebron his touches. He had 7 receptions. 7. That's the most he's been targeted all season in a game.
So you're
All
saying
right.
take the ball away from Ebron. Stop throwing the ball to Ebron.
What I'm saying is if you're Jim Bob Cooter and you're Matt Stafford, you've got playmakers all over the field, right? You don't have one guy who's exceptionally great. And look, Eric Ebron is not exceptionally great by any means. You got to continue to be creative. You got to find other ways to get other guys the ball. Look, I know Eric Ebron's a big, freakish specimen. The guy's large. He can run quick for a big man. He's got, this season, it looks like he has decent hands. It kills me to say that. It looks like he has decent hands. You got to do a better job of getting the ball to other guys. And like you said, yes, they have a bad rush defense. So you're going to sit there and try to run the ball. If that's not working, you got other guys on the outside. And we talked about it before. You can sit there and you can do a screen pass. You can do a dump off. That's essentially a run play. You know, you don't have to sit there and chuck the ball 25 yards down the field, even though I know you want to see that more. And I agree with you. There's a time and a place where you need to open it up a little bit. Because if you keep doing all this dink and dunk and everything's safe underneath, what happens is it allows the defense to sit there and basically play you shallow and forces too many guys up front, which then leads to the pocket collapsing, especially when you've got a young offensive line. You got a guy like Graham Glasgow in there who basically took the job from Lincoln Tomlinson, and you've got another rookie over there with Taylor Decker sitting there blocking up that left side. So you've got two rookies on the blind spot. You know, I mean, so you need to spread this out a little bit, stretch it out, and keep the defense towards the back of the field for yourself to sit there and keep your quarterback upright. And we've seen it time and time again. Matt Stafford is a much better quarterback when he has time to pass the ball. And if you sit there and you allow him to be creative and you allow him to do what he's got to do and get the ball into other guys' hands like Golden Tate, like Eric Ebron, like Anquan Bolden, like Marvin Jones. You know, you've got Theo Riddick coming out of the backfield. You've got options everywhere. Spread the ball around. It's a much better team when you're doing that. It's absolutely a much better team when you're doing that.
Now, going forward, despite the loss, okay, we're sitting here today. Our record's 4-4. The next matchup on the road is Minnesota, and they're probably going to be very salty coming off of a surprising, shocking loss to the Chicago Bears. Jay Cutler revitalized himself on Monday Night Football. Now, I totally missed the game because, like a lot of other people, on Monday night, I'm not watching the matchups. You know, Minnesota, Chicago really didn't do it for me a whole heck of a lot. But right now...
You were watching Raw. I know you were.
Exactly. Right now, Minnesota's a little bit in turmoil. Sam Bradford and that offense has been bogged down. They are not playing as well. And earlier on Wednesday, shockingly, North Turner just is like, peace out. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And now Minnesota is going to be a little bit in flux, and I think they're ripe for the taking.
You got Pat Shurmur taking over.
Exactly. And so what's happened is Detroit and Bob Quinn has recognized that, whoa, look at these numbers, cuz. Detroit has allowed an NFL worst 82.1 QBR, NFL worst 113.7 passer rating, and an NFL worst 73.6% completion percentage to their opponents. They are not able to stop opponents' tight ends. So what does Bob Quinn do? Recognizes, whoa, we need a little bit of help in the secondary. He made a move. And, you know, whether you believe the addition of former Tampa Bay cornerback Jonathan Banks is going to help you or not, you know, a former Mississippi State player reunites with Slay as they were college teammates. And you wonder, okay, is that an upgrade? Dude, you see his size? 6'2"? I do like the addition, and he was a former high draft pick, second-round pick. And you get a guy that might have potential, and you're getting him on the cheap. You traded nothing for him. So, in essence, it's a really inexpensive tryout to see if you can upgrade that secondary. And I like the move. I like what Bob Quinn's doing. He is not sitting back, and in his first year, he's done a lot more in terms of adding to this team in season than Mayhew ever did. He's on the move. He's not standing pat and idly waiting by as these guys whittle away. Laken Tomlinson's not doing the job. Boom. He's on the bench. If you're not performing, boom, Kyle Van Noy, we know that you're likely not going to be an addition. You gone. So it's nice to see what Bob Quinn's doing, and it's great that Bob Quinn is scouring the landscape. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if the guys that he's targeting come in here and do some things, because you can't just say, okay, great, you're making moves. You got to bring in guys that are going to produce. And I like the moves that are being made. They're not too devastatingly awful. And I'm liking the fact that I got a good feeling the Lions are going to be competitive. Most people think that this is going to be a loss. I think they're going to be competitive. Now, whether do I think they're going to win or not, I'm not certain. It's tough to go to Minnesota and win, especially given the circumstances, but I think they're going to play well, and I like what Bob Quinn's doing.
Here's the thing. I agree with you. I like what Bob Quinn is doing. I like the fact that he's active. I think going out and trading for a cornerback, yes, he was going to be released on Wednesday. On that Wednesday, they sat there and they picked him up on Tuesday. I still like the fact that he went out and basically gave up nothing for a player who could sit there and benefit this team. Now, I don't think Jonathan Banks is going to benefit this team this week against Minnesota. I think Minnesota has their own little whirlwind of crap going on around them. Look, when Norv Turner sits there and bails on your team basically 4 days before the game with the Lions, that's going to cause a little bit of an issue. All right, Pat Shurmur's going to take over. No brand new mid-season offensive coordinator automatically turns things around. Look, I know that this Lions defense, basically, if you have an issue with your quarterback, what do? You sit there, you play the Lions defense, and all of a sudden it gets much, much better. You just gave the stats. I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve here for the Minnesota Vikings. This is the prime time for this Detroit Lions team to sit there, pick up a huge win on the road. They've got to go into Minnesota. They've got to take advantage of Sam Bradford's recent struggles, take advantage of the turmoil that is surrounding the coaching staff with Minnesota, and sit there and put a big W on the board. This defense hasn't won a game all season for this team. Every game that's been won this season has been because of Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford has put this team on its back and carried them to the finish line. This is now a prime spot for Terrell Austin and his defense to sit there and come out and show a brand new side of themselves and get a W on Sunday in Minnesota against the Vikings.
Ooh, okay. We both thinking the same thing. When everyone expects the Lions to underachieve, maybe they rally and do some things and take some chances too, because it's going to be super tough, really, in that the strength of Minnesota is that defense. And if you have that attitude of, hey, let's be conservative, we're going to be looking at another 3-3 score at halftime. It's going to be super tough. And, I don't want to see Sam Bradford outperform Matthew Stafford in the stat department.
Brutal.
Would it? So Minnesota, it's tough too, because without Adrian Peterson, that run game's been in flux. The offensive line is makeshift. They go out and they try and get aged veterans to try and come on this team.
Jake Long in to sit there and
the
take
corpse
over the
of Jace Long.
Yeah, take over the left tackle spot.
If I'm Sam Bradford, I'm like, please, my God. And that loss to Chicago was pretty surprising, but it's an opportunity to go 5-4. I think it's an important game because the seat for Jim Caldwell is getting a lot hotter, and we're starting to see that, hey, if he's not going to make great decisions, if the schemes are not right, then maybe, just maybe, if we hope that they don't perform, that if they get blown out, if Sam Bradford just throws the ball over the place and the defense causes turnovers for Minnesota and they go out and blow out the Lions, maybe then the seat will get so hot that a change is made. I don't think that's going to happen. Barring a 45-3 performance where you absolutely look shitty, then I don't think they're going to change the head coach for the Lions, but I do think that it's going to be a closer game than normal, and I'm hoping that the Lions at least perform and put on a better show, that's for sure.
Look, this is week 9. Do we see DeAndre Levy this week?
No.
If you think about it, though, this would be the prime spot for him to sit there and start to get some work with the unit and just get on the field a little bit. Again, you've got a pretty beat-up offensive line for Minnesota. You've got a quarterback who kind of falters under distress with Sam Bradford. You've got a influx offensive coordination spot going on there with the coaching staff. This would be the prime spot. If DeAndre Levy was to come back and see some game reps, this would be the prime time for him, and I would expect him to shine. I'm expecting Ziggy Ansah to sit there and just be all up in the face of Sam Bradford this week.
Did you hear the news? One of the Lions defensive end finally got his comeuppance.
Yeah.
I know we talked about it briefly, ever so briefly, but they were willing to take a chance on a guy, and they picked him up, and he finally got suspended. I think, did he get suspended 4 games or 6?
3 games.
3 games.
Try to pull up his name here.
Troublemaking Lions. It was kind of surprising to see that, a Lion got his comeuppance because he was involved in, I think he was there when a dude got arrested for some issues, and I was like, oh boy, can't have that at this point in time in the season, but they were willing to take a chance on him, and he got himself suspended.
Armani Bryant, that's who it was, suspended for 3 games for violating the league substance abuse policy. It was his 2nd suspension this season.
Good job, Lions.
So once the suspension's over, he'll be gone. He's just taking up a spot.
All right, let's have a little hope that the Lions come out and perform and give us something to cheer about. Stay with us. Episode 169 is going to roll along. We're going to play a round of Jock Jams, Doc has 3 great questions lined up for the Jock, and then we'll finish out the podcast talking about the Red Wings. Up and down team, a very interesting watch. Definitely, I know Adam is excited to talk about the Detroit Red Wings. Stay with us on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to topcatteamsales.com. That's topcatteamsales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat. Thank you for sticking with us. Episode 169. Sitting here with the James Ellsworth of the Podcast Network, my cousin. You been liking what they've been doing with this jabroni jobber?
Oh, dude, I love it. Dude, I love it. Absolutely love it.
I would never, think that there would be a day where you turn on SmackDown 8:01 and the music for James Ellsworth comes out, and they're giving him a storyline. They're week after week. He doesn't have a contract yet, but it is this come-up-in story where this jabroni, a jobber, if you know anything about wrestling, is getting time, man. It's great. I get excited to see him.
You know what the best part is? The commentary from JBL, where he's like, his stomach sticks out further than his chest. This guy's a cretin. Look at him. He's a creature. Get him out of here. Oh, it's the best. JBL just sits there and roasts him all night long. It's great.
Dude, it's a great story in that it's just some jabroni, if you don't know. Just, back in the day, in the early days of wrestling, they would have these squash matches where these nobody talents would get squashed by the name guys. And they brought it back after the brand split. And the first guy, went up against Braun Strowman. And all of a sudden, the fans got behind him because it was like, wait a minute. We remember back in the day, he's a jobber. And he's a glorified jobber who got himself over. And his shit's selling great on WWE.com.
Dude, he's got his own shirt.
His own shirt,
his own saying, if you got 2 fists, you got a chance.
Exactly. And he did a podcast with Chris Jericho, and he talked about his story. Dude's been wrestling for 17 years. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where, preparation meets a little bit of luck, and dude's getting featured. And if I was a writer, I think it's time. They're doing it creatively. I think the best thing to do for him is, I know he's super popular, but I think he should have, on Tuesday's taping, he should have super kicked Dean Ambrose and turned heel.
See, I was wondering if they were going to do that.
I think they should do that.
It's funny that you say that, because I was sitting there and I was waiting for it, because the way Dean Ambrose was treating him, he's had this long, if you don't know, he's had this long arcing story arc with Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles. And basically Dean Ambrose has helped him beat AJ Styles twice in the ring, not for a championship, but just to do it. And basically a no-name jobber has beat the world champion in WWE now 2 times in a row. So now Dean Ambrose has this thing going back and forth with him, and James Ellsworth super kicks AJ Styles the week prior, and now Dean Ambrose wants nothing to do with James Ellsworth because it cost him a shot at getting another WWE heavyweight championship title match. And it's the way it's played out, it's been great. And I was waiting for that moment to happen yesterday, and it never did. But that might be something they might do.
At the title match, maybe they should do that. They should have a big swerve where either way, I like what they're doing with him, but they give the guy a contract. My God, he's been busting his ass. Give him some money,
Dude,
man.
He's taking some hard bumps, too. He got flexed in and through the announce table last night.
Dude, and the guy, of course, when you're a jabroni, you're going to be flung all over the place. That poor guy. But he is popular behind the scenes. Vince McMahon loves him. And, of course, he loves him because dude's selling shit like crazy, that shirt. And the boys are having a good old laugh because they were so shocked that they let a jabroni talk. And it was such a shocking thing when he came out there and just started talking. And they were like, what? They gave him some airtime? And Braun Strowman destroyed him. But the storyline on SmackDown is perfect for him. But it would be interesting to see where this goes with him, because it's something where he gets a pop. He gets a reaction.
Dude, he is the underdog that everybody wants to root for. It's great. It's a great storyline.
It is a great storyline. But I like what they're doing with AJ Styles. Just real quickly, dude's a superstar. In any match you put that guy in, I just wish they would make him a good guy. because he plays a decent bad guy, but it's not to the level where I can't hate the guy.
He's a better good guy.
I can't hate the guy.
You're absolutely right. He's a better good guy. And you know what? He is such an in-ring professional. We're talking about James Ellsworth. A few weeks ago, they sat there and they had their match, and he has this move called the Styles Clash. And James Ellsworth, obviously not knowing how to take that bump, you're not supposed to bend your head when AJ Styles is going to basically do it to you. He bends his head up, like basically where his chin touches his chest, almost breaks his neck. AJ Styles realizes it in mid-move and sits there and rolls the move, so he's able to kind of complete it, not hurt the guy, and the whole time he's making sure he's okay, while Dean Ambrose, who is the special guest referee, is sitting there counting 1, 2, and then Ellsworth kicks out.
AJ Styles a couple years ago talked about it on a podcast where he's actually broken someone's neck doing that. He really hurt somebody. It's a tough move to execute if you're not exactly ready to perform it in a great way. Take that bump right. That Styles Clash is dangerous, but he's hurt people with it before. But yeah, when that move hit, I thought he broke his neck.
Yeah.
Did you see what happened with TJ Perkins? I thought when he did that Hurricane Rana, I thought he killed himself.
Dude, I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, he might be dead.
He might be dead. They're getting a little bit more risky with these moves, and I was like, well, slow down a little bit. Try to execute, fellas, because we don't want 200 pounds on your neck. Really, that was a crazy ass move. And with DVR,
like those big flashy moves are great, man. But when they go wrong, it is scary.
It is scary. You know what's scary? My 3 questions for you. Let's see if you did your homework this week and what we call Jock Jams. All right, sir, a little bit of Pistons talk to start this edition of Jock Jams. After the Pistons' opening loss to Toronto, obviously the Raptors are the class of the East, but the Pistons have come back now with 3 straight double-digit victories, playing well on defense. Collectively, as an offensive unit, they're starting to gel, and when you see some continuity with KCP, with Andre Drummond, with Tobias Harris averaging 20-plus, each and every game they're playing a lot better brand of basketball. As we sit 3-1, playing great, and some storylines have emerged. Obviously, we're all peeking in at what Andre Drummond's doing in terms of his new style of taking basically a stroll through the basketball arena every time he takes a free throw, but that's interesting. He's picked it up a little bit, although he struggled a little bit versus the Knicks. KCP is playing solidly, and a lot of people are wondering, and they're chirping, because the numbers that are expected for his extension in the neighborhood of 4 years, $80 million. And last year, if you remember the offseason, in this offseason, the numbers that were splashed around to some free agents are, man, we talked about it. We were like, what the hell is going on with these contracts? And he's seeking, and it didn't happen, so he's going to become a free agent at the end of the year, and we'll talk about that. But do you think KCP deserves to be cut a check each season for the next 4 at $20 million per? KCP?
I'm going to tell you why he should be. All right. Now, you have to remember that the salary cap every single season with the NBA, it basically inflates and just bloats. It's absolutely insane. So you can expect many more millions, probably another 30, maybe $40 million headed into next season for the salary cap to just inflate to. All right. That being said, KCP is going to get a share of that. Now, what I want to sit here and I want to point out to you is a guy just signed an extension who was in the same draft class as KCP, and he signed 4 years, $81 million, and that was Victor Oladipo. I'm sorry, 4 years, $84 million. So a $21 million a season extension for Victor Oladipo. Now, I bring him up to sit there and explain this to you. All right, there's this really complicated stat on basketballreference.com. It's called win shares, and they do this really good job of breaking it down. It would take forever for me to explain it to you, but what I'm going to tell you is that KCP, through his first 3 years, he's the number 1 guy with the highest overall win share percentage. All right. That being said, he's got a 95.8 win share percentage, whereas Victor Oladipo has an 84.5 win share percentage. And Oladipo's commanding $21 million a season with his extension now. So you have to pay KCP the money. You've got to. It doesn't matter. I mean, you basically, these contracts, the way everything works is if one general manager comes out and says, yeah, you're worth it to our team to do this, that's where the bar is set. So now KCP is an integral part of this Detroit Pistons team. He is the one guy on defense who can sit there and lock down everybody else in the NBA. He can lock down LeBron James, the most dominant player in all of the NBA, Just sit there and basically just take him out of the game. He did it during the playoffs. The issue with KCP is he's not consistent enough on the offensive side, and I think that will even out this season. If you look at his numbers, it looks like he's tracking in the right direction. I'd like to see him averaging somewhere closer to 14, maybe 15 points a game. Right now, he's averaging, I think, 10 to start the season, but I think it's just a slow start. He came out the other day and he talked about that loss that they sustained to Toronto and basically said, hey, look, to start the season, we weren't ready. And you've kind of seen us get ready these next 3 games. We sat there, we got popped in the face, and we've come back and we've taken everything much more seriously, and we're rocking and rolling right now. So I think KCP deserves the $20 million a season. Lock him up, keep him, because honestly, he's the best guy you got on the defensive side of the floor. And offensively, when he is producing, he gives it to you in bunches. He just needs to level out just a little bit.
It's just a staggering number in that basically it dictates the market, free market system dictates he's going to get the money. And so it'll be interesting to see whether maybe an interesting storyline down the line. Do they trade him and potentially get something for him if they get any inclination that he might not sign here? So we'll see how this storyline progresses the rest of the way. Sticking with basketball, but turning our attention to college basketball. It's about that time, sir. Michigan State is kicking off the college basketball season soon. And of course, what does Tom Izzo pride himself on? Always making a super tough non-conference schedule. And this year is no different. If you look at the schedule for Michigan State college basketball, this year in the non-conference schedule, you got matchups versus Arizona, Kentucky, Duke, and this is something that a lot of people are debating whether this is something that's great for the program. It has worked out in the past in that you get battle-tested and things like that, but unfortunately, this year we have a strong class at Michigan State, but some injuries are starting to rack up, and it's looking like this portion of the schedule is going to be very daunting. How do you think Michigan State basketball is going to fare in this super tough non-conference schedule?
I think you just cut their non-conference schedule way short because they've got number 10 Arizona, like you said, number 2 Kentucky. They sit there and they later on play number 1 Duke, but they are playing a bunch of teams that make the NCAA tournament regularly. You got Florida Gulf Coast that they're going to have to play, St. John's. They've got Oral Roberts, who's always a contender in the Summit League. And believe me, I know all about Summit League basketball because I went to Oakland University when they were part of the Summit League. Speaking of Oakland University, you've got to play Oakland University before Big Ten play opens up. So they also have Youngstown State. It's a jam-packed non-conference schedule. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. The majority of this basketball team is made up by underclassmen. So that's going to contribute to a struggle, especially early on. Tom Izzo has a method to his madness, though. He sits there, puts the guys through the grinder, spits them out, pulls them out of the meat casing after they've already been put through the grinder, and shoves them back through it one more time. That way, when Big Ten play turns around, they're competitive. They're not just competitive, they're mean, they're nasty, and they're ready to do the damn thing. I expect Tom Izzo to get the most out of these guys. It's going to be a struggle early on, but if you're a Michigan State fan, don't lose hope. It's going to be okay. There's a reason for what Tom Izzo does. Tom Izzo is a great coach. You're going to have to lean on him knowing what he does, and he's going to get the best out of these players.
3 words should be the theme of this year: Middle Tennessee State. You flash that anytime you think this team is getting braggadocious or is not humble. You flash that plaque each and every time you want to send a message. Anytime out there you go, you can get your ass beat. And if you don't play defense, you don't rebound, you don't play the Spartan way, Middle Tennessee State, they got to cure that embarrassment because, cuz, are you starting to hear the whispers that there's a single curse going on among the Michigan State program that once a Mr. Jim Harbaugh set foot and was hired at Michigan State lost in the first round. The basketball team had a massive embarrassment in the NCAA. Now the football team has taken an awful turn. We got to cure this Harbaugh curse, sir.
I don't think that's true because you guys sat there and you beat them on the football field last year. I mean, it was a miracle play, and Jalen Watts-Jackson's hip hasn't been the same since, but still.
By the time this podcast comes out, a World Series champion will have been crowned. One fan base is going to be ecstatic. A long-term baseball drought will have ended, and one fan base will be devastated knowing that their drought will continue. But looking at the overall World Series, it was very entertaining, super highly rated, great managerial moves made by both guys, unconventional moves made, bringing in closers in the early innings, keeping them out there for multiple pitches, and at some point even extending their maximum pitch count for the season. And so when we look at the World Series, I always look at it when you see the best teams play in any sport, I go to myself, I say, how do my Tigers look compared to these two teams? And I go, oh my God, they're nowhere near the pitching efficiency of what these guys can do. Basically, it's Aroldis Chapman versus Andrew Miller in that bullpen, two guys that were on the same team and guys that we talked about, I think, in terms of maybe the Tigers should have targeted and spent some money on. But it didn't happen. How do you view how the Tigers stand compared to the two teams that competed in the 2016 World Series?
There's a couple different things here that I think both these teams have done really, really well and are doing really well. And the way the team is constructed is interesting. Both these teams have great bullpens, and that's an issue that we've had here in Detroit forever. We've always wanted a good bullpen, have yet to really find it. K-Rod was a very good closer last season. You got to get some pieces to build around him to sit there and strengthen that. So getting a better bullpen, upgrading that bullpen is number one, because like you said, Aroldis Chapman, Andrew Miller, these guys are lockdown guys, and they're not the only guys in these bullpens. They've got closers, they've got setup guys who can sit there and go out there and give you more than one inning, can sit there and lock down the game when the game has to be locked down. All right, moving on, coaching. All right, if you look at Terry Francona as a manager and you look at Joe Madden as a manager, they're both great managers, absolutely great managers. But somebody's got to be able to make the decision on whether or not your middle relief guy is going to sit there and give you 2 innings, whether or not your closer is going to give you a 4-out save, or whether or not you've got to sit there and you've got to pull a pitcher. And this is something that's been real interesting through this entire World Series is the way the pitching staffs have been used. I mean, you've had guys get knocked out in the first 2 innings of games, and next thing you know, you're leaning heavily on your bullpen. And guys like Terry Francona and Joe Madden have done a spectacular job sitting there managing this team, managing these arms, and getting this team to this point where they're competing in what everybody wanted to see. Everybody wanted to see a World Series go 7 games, especially between these two teams that have had long histories of just basically fledgling through seasons and droughts and not winning world championships in baseball. So bullpen upgrade and manager. And that brings me to my next point. When you have young talent on the team, go out and pay the young talent early on. Don't sit there, don't go to arbitration, and don't sit there and try to milk another year out of a soft deal. If you know that the talent's going to be good and you know that they're going to perform for you, sit there, give them their extension, and just go. Reward the young talent on the team. You got to be able to go out and get the young talent first off, though. So you've got to be able to either A, draft it, or you've got to be able to recognize it in a trade, bring it in, cultivate it, and then reward it before it's time for it to be rewarded. And that's what these two teams have done exceptionally well. If you look at the guys who are playing right now for them, you've got young kids splattered all over the lineup for these teams, and they've been handsomely rewarded for what they've done for these organizations.
The way I would put it is what you saw in the series was a graduate level course in managing. And what we got right now is probably the best way to put it is a young freshman walking into college.
Dude, we're remedial.
Not in college yet?
No, we're remedial.
Yeah.
We're like that high school senior who just graduated but didn't really try hard in high school, and somehow they got into college, and they just sat there and they took their entrance exam, and it's like, hey, you know what? You're not good enough to sit there and go into algebra. You've got to go do dummy math. And by dummy math, we mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and we will touch on some pre-algebra because you still got another class before we can get you into algebra.
Yeah, basically.
That's where we're at.
We got basically that maybe young, talented cat that gets into college but maybe academically can't cut it.
That's
but,
right.
But getting their way through for some odd reason.
Yeah.
But Brett Ausmus, hopefully he's learning.
With a duffel bag full of money.
Yeah, you got it. Hopefully Brett Ausmus is learning something because, yeah, what these managers are doing, what really stings too is once Jim Leyland was let go, you had an opportunity maybe to pick up a Terry Francona or maybe the opportunity to pick up a Joe Madden. Did you get any of them? No, you went with the successor to Jim Leyland being Brad Ausmus. And so that's why we sit where we sit at the current moment and probably potentially looking at a champion from the AL Central.
How big of a botch was that?
Botch.
Those are two guys you could have possibly have had.
All you got to know is your general manager came out and verbally said it with his own mouth. He said it might have been a mistake to go to Brad Ausmus in the situation that we were in. And I think that was probably the window shut, the seal going psh, where your championship hopes and dreams went away.
Brutal.
You know what's not going away?
What's up?
Doc and Jock. We'll be back with one final segment talking about our Detroit Red Wings. Final segment coming up on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
All right, cuz, final segment on this episode 169. Thanks, everybody, for downloading. We greatly appreciate all the support on iTunes, on all the platforms where you can find podcasts. Definitely search out Detroit Sports Podcast. Now, cuz, it's looking like potentially a roller coaster type season for these Detroit Red Wings. After a solid 6-game win streak where you got points, dropped the last couple, it was a surprising loss to the Florida Panthers. I don't know if it's one of those things where they got our number, but outside of playing well against the Red Wings, the Panthers aren't playing that great. And you're starting to see a little bit of when the goaltending isn't as sharp as we would like. I believe Mrazek was pulled versus the Panthers, gave up a ton of goals, and Jimmy Howard had to come back in. But what we're seeing is maybe a slowly budding goalie controversy in that Mrazek is probably pinpointed as the starting goalie, but Jimmy Howard, when he's gone in there, especially I believe versus the Rangers, he stood on his head. Was in a game that I was shocked they earned 2 points in. He was stopping breakaways, looked sharp, looked athletic, looked like he was moving the best that he'd ever had. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Red Wings is, what's up with Jimmy Howard? Do you think he should be getting the nod and playing a little bit more than Peter Mrazek?
Well, look, first off, Victor Trocheck has the Wings number. He's a killer for the Red Wings. He's a Florida Panther forward there. But yeah, he kills them every time he plays them. But yeah, I think we do have a little bit of a goalie controversy here. And now look, Jimmy Howard has been playing out of his mind. And going into the season, Peter Mrazek was given the reins as the number 1 goaltender. That being said, through 7 games that he's played, he hasn't shown that he's earned it. While Jimmy Howard, in the games that he's played, has shown to be, at this point, the clear-cut number 1. And I don't think it's necessarily a thing of matchups. I just think Jimmy Howard is playing that much better in net. It doesn't look like he's fighting the puck off. It looks like he's seeing the puck clearly, and he's making a ton of saves. And you talked about it yourself with the New York Ranger game. I mean, he was hung out to dry by that defense. And that defense isn't very good this year. It's going to be brutal. What's going to happen is it's going to be a risk-reward type of defense where the defense is going to jump up into plays. They're going to pinch. They're going to sit there and they're going to try to provide some offensive lift for the team. And what that's going to result in is turnovers and odd man rushes coming back the other way. So you're going to see a lot of breakaways. You're going to see a lot of 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, and maybe even 3-on-1s. So the goaltenders have to come out. They've got to cut down the angles. They've got to play sharp. They've got to sit there and basically man their net. And Peter Mrazek hasn't been able to do that consistently enough. Jimmy Howard, on the other hand, has looked outstanding, absolutely outstanding. The guy's giving up less than a goal a game right now. He's already got a shutout on the season, and his save percentage is through the roof. He's at .973, which is great, absolutely great. Peter Mrazek, on the other hand, is struggling to stop a beach ball. So I think right now you may see a switch in who's going to be your number 1 goaltender going forward. It may just be one of those things where Peter Mrazek needs to sit there, take a couple days off in a row, watch Jimmy Howard, watch how he's playing, maybe get with the goalie coach, go over some tape, do a few things on the practice ice there, and just kind of iron out a couple different things. Because Peter Mrazek has shown that he does this quite often through his career. He gets really, really hot for a long stretch of games. Then he cools down and he becomes as cold as the ice that he plays on. And then he gets hot again. So it might just be one of those things where Jeff Blashill's got to ride the hot hand. And right now the hot hand is Jimmy Howard.
Are you concerned at all, Vanek being hurt for a little bit of a time? Since he's been out, they haven't seemed to have picked up the pace of play. It seems like they've lost a little bit of something with him being out.
Here's the deal. I try telling you this, and every time Vanek scores, you sit there and you bring it back up and rub it in my face. Vanek is not going to give you the production that he gave you for the first 3 or 4 games the entire season. He's just,
only 8 points in 7 games that he played.
I know.
4 goals, 4 assists.
I know. Everybody crushes me. The thing is, you sit there, you crush me on Twitter. I get text messages from my cousin who I sat there and I was like, man, X garbage, this, that, the other thing. He was like, you're an idiot. What are you talking about?
Well, look at the stats. 4 goals, 4 assists, plus minus, plus 5.
I know.
4 penalty minutes, 2 power play goals.
He looks good right now. He looks real good right now.
On the bench? No, he doesn't. Even get him back on the ice.
What's going to happen when he goes on a dry spell and you're like, where's Thomas Vanek at? What's he doing? Now, right now, he's injured. Right now, he's hurt. So, yes, does that hurt the team? Absolutely, because he was a top line forward for this team who was putting the puck in the net, and that's something that this team doesn't have a lot of right now. I don't think Zetterberg has a goal on the season at this point, and I know a guy like Franz Nielsen only has a couple. Dylan Larkin has basically a few as well. So your top line offensive players, they're not putting the puck in the net. Thomas Vanek was a guy who was manning a top 2 lines. Sometimes he'd be moved down to the 3rd line, and he was able to score. And it seemed like he was almost able to score at will, just to sit there and rub it in my face so you could sit there and chirp me on Twitter. So, yes, it does hurt this team. It absolutely does hurt this team. That
you know what else hurts this team? When your best player has more penalty minutes than points. Dylan Larkin arguably is the best player on the team. Sitting right now, 10 games played, 13 penalty minutes, and 4 points, 3 goals, and an assist. And a number that's a little bit shocking. I know it's a little bit of a stat that people kind of pick apart, but he's sitting right now at a -7, plus minus. That's not good. And I think an issue that we'll talk about briefly here is Franz Nielsen's a -5 player. And what I've seen with him is I liked the addition of him, but I didn't like the 6-year term. But Kenny Holland's come out and said that, hey, listen, to get a free agent, you got to give years. So we gave it to him. But what you see is on the defensive side of the ice, Duke kind of loafs a little bit. And you see that kind of the intensity that, and we're going to talk about the defense as a whole, but a strong team also has forwards that play solid defense. And right now, when your 2 best guys that are center icemen and forwards, Franz Nielsen and Dylan Larkin, are combined -12, that's a problem. And you need better defensive help from the forwards. And I know it's tough to kind of know exactly that fine line of pushing aggressively to go from one zone to the other and not leaving yourself exposed to odd man rushes. So for me personally, I would like it if the defense played better, stay at home, do your job, and be a little bit more stingy on the defensive end. But yeah, it's very concerning that right now Dylan Larkin and Franz Nielsen on the ice more for goals that are scored than when they are putting the puck in the net themselves.
I think some of that can contribute to just trying to find their place on the team right now. Dylan Larkin coming into the season was supposed to start off as a center. He's now been bumped back to wing, and every now and then he'll sit there and he'll play center. So I still think Dylan Larkin's trying to figure out where he belongs on his line and what his job is, because it's totally different when you're playing center as opposed to playing wing. You've got more defensive responsibilities when you're playing center. As far as Franz Nielsen goes, he was supposed to be that guy who was supposed to pick up the slack that Pavel Datsyuk left when he sat there and rolled out to play in the KHL over in Russia. Now, Franz Nielsen, like you said, loafs a little bit in the defensive zone. He's not as tenacious as Pavel Datsyuk was. That was the one great thing about Pavel Datsyuk was he would always sit there, he'd always back check, and then out of nowhere, he'd basically pick your pocket and turn puck up ice, and next thing you know, you got an odd man rush with Pavel Datsyuk kind of leading it or getting the puck up to whoever his winger is, and then he would come in trailing, and he would normally score some type of crazy goal. And Franz Nielsen, again, I don't think he's found his place with his line mates. I don't think he's found his place with what's going on with this team at this moment. Again, it's going to be a risk-reward season where they're going to sit there and they're going to give up some things on the defensive side of the ice to sit there and try to score more goals to counterbalance the scoring that is going on in the defensive zone.
So we were talking earlier about Jimmy Howard. Do you see, if they make a move, let's just predicate it on, let's just say that the odd man out is Jimmy Howard. He'll get you some value. Do you trade him for a solid defensive forward? Or do you need to go out there and find another right-handed defenseman or a defenseman that's a stay-at-home guy that will do some things on the defensive end and also be effective on the power play, or be a guy that is able to help on the defensive end and stop all these wave of goals against these good teams?
If I was Ken Holland,
what's more of a need? Defensive forward
or defense? Okay. Honestly, it's defense, because you don't have a number one or a number two defenseman. And your best defenseman right now on this team is probably Dan DeKeyser. And on any other team in the NHL who's sitting there competing for a playoff spot, he's probably a number three defenseman on those teams. So I think you need to go out and you need to address the defense on this team.
Well, I would argue right now, DeKaiser has the most upside, but the guy that's performing the best is Green. 7 points in 10 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 10 penalty minutes.
That's why he was brought here initially. He struggled a little bit last season to
playing
kind of
well
find
at
his
this point in
place.
time, early start of the season. He's playing pretty good, and I noticed on the power play he does some things, so he's playing well. But yeah, the issues on the defense aren't that well, and what you see is when there's a mistake and breakdown, there's turnovers like we've seen in the past. They struggle to get the puck out of their zone, and they struggle a little bit with the size of some teams in terms of the, when teams start to amp it up on the forecheck, they seem to kind of run around with their heads cut off. They can't get the puck out of the zone, and we start seeing odd man rushes, leaving the goaltenders out to dry. There's only been a handful of goals, I would say, that have been where you go, Mrazek might have let in one soft goal, but the rest is the goaltenders are trying their best, but this defense isn't that good.
This team struggles with big physical forwards. Guys like Brad Marchand. Florida has a couple guys. Trochek's one of them. They struggle with guys who are big, physical, and who have a net front presence down low. They sit there. They either get bullied, they get pushed around. They can't seem to clear the loose puck that's kind of laying right out in front of the goaltender. And that's how a couple of these goals that are getting scored on them and putting them behind early in games are being scored. So you're right. There's a couple things that they do have to shore up, whether it be with a defensive-minded forward or just as a forward group as a whole. They've got to kind of change and take more of a defensive stance, or go out and try to get a lockdown defenseman, somebody who you can sit there and you can say, hey, this guy is going to sit there and help carry the load. We'll team him with either Dan DeKaiser or Mike Green if you want, and sit there and see what you can get. The one guy who I've been really impressed with on the defensive side of the ice is Ryan Sproul. It seems like every chance that Ryan Sproul gets to be out there, he's doing something impactful, something where whether or not it's putting points on the board or whether it's a big defensive play. Ryan Sproul seems to have kind of found his place. He's only played in about half the games at this point. Him and Xavier Ouellette are splitting time. But I feel confident when Ryan Sproul's out there. I like what he brings on the offensive side, and I like what he brings on the defensive side.
As of this recording, Red Wings are 6-4, 12 points, solidly at third in the Atlantic. They will have played Philadelphia, looking to get the first victory in that arena since 1997, the year I graduated. Coming up
won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, they haven't won a game in that building in Philadelphia in almost damn near 20 years. My God! But hopefully they perform well, get that monkey off their back. And they got a game Friday at home, I believe, versus the Winnipeg Jets. Just keep it going. That 6-game winning streak really took, really brought back a lot of fans and kind of opened some eyes that, okay, if the Wings can play fast, if they can, take advantage of the hot start by Darren Helm, keep that wave going, and you're starting to kind of see the philosophy of this new era of hockey. Speed, speed, speed. Get going, and there's a fine line between flying through the zone and maintaining your defensive responsibilities. And the Wings are trying to learn that on the fly, and we'll see where this team goes. But I think a move or two would definitely help this squad. But it's a good start: 6-4, 12 points, third in the Atlantic, and they are playing an exciting brand of hockey. They just need to do a couple better things versus good teams and put the puck in the net reliably, consistently, even against good teams. Yeah, of course, when you play bottom feeders and teams that aren't that great defensively, then it looks great and the stat sheet gets filled up. But when you start playing the good teams, a la Philadelphia, a la, the teams from Florida, Boston, Montreal, you got to go out there and not get shut out like you did versus the Bruins when they came to your house.
Things that'll help this team out a lot is getting their special teams figured out, whether it be on the power play or the penalty kill, becoming more aggressive on the power play, scoring more goals, and being more aggressive on the penalty kill, locking guys down and keeping them out from in front of your net. Those two things will help sit there and contribute to some victories for this team.
All right, final thought as a hockey guy. Obviously, Pistons, Red Wings have had a separate arena now for the better part of the time. We've been watching sports as a hockey guy, because I believe you're not as big a basketball fan as you are a hockey guy.
And I am not.
Okay, do you want the Pistons sharing an arena with the team that you love to watch, the Detroit Red Wings? There are some semantical issues, but it does seem like this day and age that in the construction of arenas, there is an easy way to kind of build a dual-purpose arena. And, Tom Gores is a pimp. I'm not going to lie. Dude doesn't want to just go there and share time. Like, listen, I ain't no tenant. I ain't no pity tenant. I'm trying out here to get me a partnership deal. I want all the revenue split with me and the Illiches. I want to go into the new Little Caesars Arena, and when there's good shit happening, I want half the profit. Dude's making moves, making deals, and it sounds like from what I'm kind of gathering from the fans on our Twitter page and the news around town is the hockey fans don't want the basketball fans chilling at their arena. What's the deal?
I don't necessarily care so much. My big issue comes, why didn't this get hammered out earlier? Why wasn't this discussed?
It's not that easy, bro. There's a lot of shit to kind of work through.
I get it, but you sat there, you design a stadium, you design an arena, and now as it's being completed, all of a sudden Tom Gores wants to jump in on it. It's like there's this new hot fire action. He's got to be part of it.
No, remember, Tellem was hired a couple years ago, probably for the preliminary kind of talks.
I get it. It's just, my whole thing is, we could have sat there and you could have built this monster dual-purpose arena. Instead, we built a hockey arena, and now you want to move into the hockey arena. And that's where my issue is, because what happens is you've got ice that has to be down. And the one thing you could say about Joe Louis is it always had good ice. It was always great to play at Joe Louis and skate on that ice because the ice was always awesome. Now you have a basketball arena going inside of a hockey arena, and you got to sit there, you got to tear the ice down, melt it down, put it back up. And what happens is it's going to lead to soft ice. And if you're a hockey player, you don't like playing on soft ice. And what does that do for the Red Wings? It doesn't hurt the Pistons, but it hurts the Red Wings, and that's my issue.
Yeah, it's just interesting that I don't know if it's maybe a little bit of race involved, or you don't want dual purpose. Everyone wants to keep things separate, but it's just interesting in that I wonder if the move downtown is going to be fruitful for the Pistons. Because in my head, I think that the big money spenders are kind of used to going out to Auburn Hills. And are they going to be willing to travel? Because it's going to be a big mess when there's a concerts going on. Downtown is not going to, going to the Palace is relatively easy. You can get there through the back roads. You can get there from a mile road. You can get there off of Tinkin. Boom, make a right. You're right there at the Palace, avoiding all the highways. How is it going to be with traffic trying to navigate this thing going on where it happens? It's going to be something where I'm interested to see the attendance numbers.
I don't think it'll be that difficult to get into downtown, because you got to remember, this is the one thing that is great about downtown Detroit. You can park pretty much anywhere.
Kind of walk around.
Walk.
Yeah, you can get
and
around.
if you can't walk, you can sit there and you can take the mugger mover wherever you got to go, and that'll drop you off somewhere close.
Do they look like they've been walking a whole hell of a lot?
No. Nobody in the state of Michigan. Looks like we're on constant state of hibernation.
Yeah, it looks like people are going to be finding okay, how do I get to the casino, to the arena via the people mover?
Right.
So, okay, but it'll be interesting to see. Plus, last part, if the Pistons have some success, you think the market will sustain a 20% increase in prices? I like the $15 ticket at the Palace, and I like the entertainment value at the Palace. The Pistons, I think in my wheelhouse, in my estimation of what I'm willing to pay, probably not more than $25 a ducat. And I don't think that'll be a horrible seat probably going forward in the new arena. So I don't know if the new market will sustain an average price of like $35 for a nosebleed seat, where you can get it now for $10.
I don't know. The Piston fans that live in the city are clamoring for this. They really want this. And
at $10 prices, I think they want it.
If they're able to sit there and support the ticket for it, then yeah, I think it'll be great. And, it'll sit there and kind of invite some new life into the arena, especially with the Pistons. And the one thing that was great about the Pistons when they were winning championships and they were competing every single year and winning the Eastern Conference, what was awesome was going to the Palace, was the fan base, was everybody being riled up and rowdy. I mean, I remember going to a Christmas Eve game at the Palace, and it was outstanding. It was packed, and it was on Christmas Eve. It was absolutely insane. Look, if you're able to support if the fan base is able to support the Pistons in Detroit, then hey, it's great. I think it's outstanding. I don't think race has anything to do with this at this point. I just think that it's from my point of view, it seems like all of a sudden Tom Gores has this itch because there's something new going on and he's not necessarily involved. Almost seems like he's kind of like an attention whore. Like, oh, hey, that's going on. I got to get a part of it. Let me be right in the middle of it. I'm going to be, right there in the center of everything. And hey, don't forget about me, And I don't like that. I don't think that works real good. I don't know. That bothers me.
Yes, sir. Great podcast, cuz. Very good deal. Real quickly, any college game I should peek in this week?
Oh, what do we got going on? I'm sure there's something going on. I didn't even take a look. I totally forgot all about it. You know what? Here, hold on. Give me 1 sec here. And you got Texas A&M versus Mississippi State. That's a noon start. Not too many big games going on. Virginia Tech versus Duke. That looks like that might be an okay matchup. Florida versus Arkansas. It's another SEC matchup that you can sit there and take a peek at. And yeah, I mean, really kind of looks well. You got Nebraska versus Ohio State. Hopefully Nebraska can
That'll be a good game.
Hang an L on Ohio State. And you got Alabama versus LSU. That's an 8 o'clock start. Both those games are. So those would probably be the two big ones.
All right. Very good podcast, sir. Great. Thank you for everybody that's been downloading, supporting our project. We'll be around every single Thursday. Check out the other shows on this fine network. Almost daily running podcasts via the internet platform. Great podcast, sir. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon, episode 169 in the books.
Go Tigers. I don't know. They're not even playing. You're going to save that, aren't you? Go Wings. Go Pistons.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me. They talk to me, they tell me things that I will do, they show me things I'll do.